Done? Okay, close the gate. Hello students. Today we are going to read the menstrual cycle. In previous lecture I already completed the gametogenesis, right? We complete the gametogenesis, and today our lecture starts from menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle. Look here, when we are going to read this menstrual cycle, actually mammals, two types of mammals are there, right? One mammals means what? They are ovulators. They release ovum. Some mammals, they are called as spontaneous mammal. As for example, in human, that means what is the meaning of spontaneous human? They continuously every month they release ovum, right? Every month they release ovum. They need not coitus, right? That's why they are called as spontaneous ovulators. Another is called induced ovulators. Induced ovulator means what? Some mammals like rat or rabbits, right? So they need coitus for stimulate the ovulation, right? So they need coitus. That's why, means without coitus their ovulation does not take place. That's why here coitus is important, copulation is important, and after copulation 24 to 48 hours they release the ovum. These type of mammals, they are called as induced ovulators, right? As for example, rat. And humans are spontaneous ovulator because they release ovum monthly in their specific monthly cycle. That's why it is called menstrual cycle, right? Because per month this cycle is continuously going on. One thing I tell you here. Another, some now here, what is menstrual cycle? And some animals we read Asterius cycle. Asterius cycles means seasonal breeders, right? They have no monthly. They did not release a monthly ovum. They did not release this one, right? They have no ovulation. Monthly ovulation is present only in this menstrual cycle is present only in primates. Primates means this primates, it contains monkey, ape, and human. These three mammals, they in these three mammals this menstrual cycle is present. Other mammals, they have Asterius cycle, means they are seasonal breeders. So before going to start this menstrual cycle, I tell you, and I think you understand about the induced ovulators. Human is not a induced ovulator. Human is spontaneous ovulator because it need not coitus for ovulation, right? As for example, coitus ovulator means what? We can say induced ovulator. They are, as for example, rabbit, right? That is also this type of. Another thing I tell you here, Asterius cycle and menstrual cycle. Asterius cycle is seasonal breeders, right? And like cow, buffaloes, they are Asterius. They have Asterius cycle. But in case of mammal means which mammal? Primates. Primate means monkey, ape, and humans. They shows monthly cycles, means we can say menstrual cycle. Okay, now we start here. The reproductive cycle in female primates. What is given here? Primates. And already I tell you here, primates means what? It is the most evolved group, that is order primata, right? It is order, right? And this primate means it contains monkey, ape, and human beings. They are called as menstrual cycle because this cycle monthly cycle. Other mammals, they have not menstrual cycle, but they have Asterius cycle, right? So they are seasonal breeders. Okay. The first menstruation began at puberty, and this is called menarche. Arc means what? Starting. Menarche, starting of menstrual cycle. In human females, menstruation is repeated at an average interval of 28 to 29 days. It is the ideal lifespan of menstrual cycle, and the cycle of events starting from one menstruation till the next one, each called menstrual cycle. What is called menstrual cycle? It is given cycle of events. Events means where we can divide these events into three parts, right? First one is pre-ovulatory, then after ovulation is there, right? Then post-ovulatory and bleeding phases, right? So this is these events: bleeding phase, then pre-ovulatory phase, ovulation take place at fixed date, that is 14th day, and the last post-ovulatory phase is fixed day phase, means it lasts for 14 days, right? So these are events starting from one menstruation till to the next one is called menstrual cycle. Okay, one ovum is released, that is called ovulation. What is ovulation? Ovulation means release of ovum during the middle of the menstrual cycle. During the middle of each menstrual cycle means at each 14th day, right? The major events of the menstrual cycles are shown in figure. We will read this one. What is shown in starting from menstruation. Menstruation means what? Bleeding phase. We can say this one is bleeding phase. Another one is follicular phase. It is also called as proliferative phase. Here development of follicles occurs. That's why it is called follicular phase. It is also called as proliferative phase. Its another name is pre-ovulatory phase, means before ovulation, right? Or it is also called as estrogenic phase, right? Here luteal phase, right? Secretory phase, also luteal phase, secretory phase. Another name of this one is post-ovulatory phase, right? Or we can say here progesterone, because here progesterone is released. It is also called as progesteronic phase, right? And next cycle begins here once new menstruation starts, right? The major events of the menstrual cycles are shown in there. The cycle starts within the menstrual phases when menstrual flow occurs and it lasts for 3 to 5 days. Normally it is there. The menstrual flow results due to the breakdown of endomaterial. Menstrual flow, it is due to the breakdown of endomaterial. Endomaterial means it is the endomaterial of uterus, right? Endometerial lining of the uterus, right? Because it also contains some blood vessels, so blood is also going on, and its blood vessels which forms liquid that comes out through vagina. This blood, it cannot coagulate because it contains, what contains it? Just fibrinolysin enzyme. Fibrinolysin enzyme is, it is a fibrolytic enzyme. So it cannot form fibrin. Menstruation only occurs in release if the released ovum is not fertilized. Okay, I will draw a sketch here, right? And then I tell you also. But first, here we read this statement. Lack of menstruation may be indicative of pregnancy. If pregnancy occurs, what happens? This menstruation stops, right? Because it is corpus luteum is formed, and corpus luteum, it releases progesterone continuously. Level of progesterone is going high, right? And level of progesterone going high means what? Progesterone is called as pregnancy hormone. First thing, why it is called? Because it is responsible for the growth of endometrium of uterus. Progesterone present means endometrium continuously grows, right? That's why. However, it may also be caused due to some other underlying causes. As for example, sometimes what happens? Stress, poor health, due to the poor health, right? Sometimes this also occurs, means menstruation delayed. And this, if menstruation is absent, then we use one term that is called amenorrhea. Here, if MC is absent, and this one is called menstruation, right? Amenorrhea, right? And if it is a painful menstruation, suppose that sometimes these are the terms which we use. If it is a painful, or painful means we use dis, right? We can say dysmenorrhea, RHEA. This word means painful, or means absent of amenorrhea. Sometimes what happens? The lifespan of menstrual cycle, it is reduced, right? And it means not 28 to 30 days, it becomes only 3 weeks. When it becomes only 3 weeks, Means if life cycle is that means the lifespan of menstrual cycle is reduced by 3 weeks, then what happens? It is also called as polymenorrhea. Polymenorrhea. Poly means many. Means this more than one menstrual cycle is present, right? So this one is called if the day is reduced. You can say day is reduced by 3 weeks, right? Another one term we also use here, as for example here, when bleeding is more, mean exceeded up to means more than normal blood loss is 40 to 80 milliliter, right, in per menstrual cycle. But if it is more than 100 ml, then what happens? It is called as menorrhagia. Menorrhagia, right? So these are some terms which we used which is used in related with the menstrual cycle. If menstrual cycle is absent, as per I tell you here, some other reasons like stress or poor health, then it is called amenorrhea, right? Amenorrhea. Means absent. Painful means dysmenorrhea, right? If day is reduced, right, in place of 4 weeks, it becomes 3 weeks, then it is called polymenorrhea. And sometimes what happens? Bleeding is exceeded, more than 100 ml blood is released in case in menstrual cycle, then this one is called menorrhagia. Rhagia means it is breaking down of blood vessels. So these are some terms which we use here, right? Here another term, the menstrual phase is followed by the follicular phase. Menstrual phase means what? Bleeding phase. This one is our bleeding phase. When bleeding phase, it is followed by the follicular phase. Follicular phase when follicles are developed, right? Means it is also called as pre-ovulatory phase. During this phase, the primary follicles in the ovary, they grow to become a fully mature Graafian follicle. Already I tell you the development in the last time. I also tell you, right, about the development of Graafian follicle, how a primary follicle is a pre-model cell grow into a primary follicle, then primary follicle becomes a secondary follicle, secondary to tertiary, and tertiary to Graafian follicle, right? And simultaneously the endometrium of uterus, it also regenerates, right? Endometrium of uterus regenerates, means which layer is formed here? Here this layer is called stratum functionalis. This stratum functionalis is regenerated. This stratum functionalis, this is the layer which is in every menstrual cycle, when it is not fertilized, means when fertilization does not occur, then it breaks down and released out from the body, okay, through the proliferation, right? These changes in the ovary and the uterus are induced by changes in the level of pituitary. Which hormone of pituitary? Pituitary means FSH and LH, and ovarian hormones. Ovarian hormones means progesterone and estrogen, right? One hypothalamic hormone is also there, and this hypothalamic hormone is our GnRH, gonadotropic releasing hormone. FSH means what? Follicle stimulating hormone. LH means what? Luteinizing hormone, right? So GnRH, it is a hypothalamic releasing hormone, hypothalamic hormone, right? Gonadotropic releasing factor. It is responsible for the stimulation of pituitary gland, anterior pituitary gland, to release follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, correct? Here ovarian hormone is two hormones are there. Progesterone, the progesterone released from corpus luteum, right? And estrogen means this our follicular cells, they secrete estrogens, right? Now here the secretion of gonadotropins, and here gonadotropins means two hormones, that is LH and FSH. LH means what? Luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. They increase gradually in starting, means in follicular stage. They increase gradually during the follicular phase, right? and stimulates follicular development as well as the secretion of androgens by the growing of follicles, right? So they first what happened? What is the function of this LH and FSH? First, they stimulate the follicular development inside the ovary, right? Also, as well as secretion of estrogen by growing follicle. Because when a follicle is grown, what happens? It has membrana granulosa cells and it has theca interna. This theca interna, it is a cellular layer. It is responsible for secretion of this one, estrogen. So when it grows, when the follicle grows, number of cells are also increased and they start secreting estrogens, right? By the growing follicle. So who secretes estrogen? Growing follicle secretes the estrogen. This estrogen, it is secreted by the growing follicles. Who stimulate this growing follicle to secrete estrogens? It is our LH and FSH, right? Both LH and FSH, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, attain a peak level in the middle cycle. LH and FSH, look here, mostly LH, it is called LH surge because at the 14th day, the level of luteinizing hormone is maximum, right? 14th day means it is a ovulation day. It is called ovulation day, right? Rapid secretion of LH leading to its maximum level during the mid-cycle. Mid-cycle means 14th day, called LH surge. It is called LH surge, right? Induced rupture of Graafian follicle and thereby the release of ovum. That is called ovulation, right? It induced, who induced? Luteinizing hormone. It induced, what induced? Ovulation, right? Because at that time, this LH, level of LH is maximum. So it is called LH surge, right? So first what happens? It is responsible for the rupture of Graafian follicle. Because Graafian follicle, already I tell you, Graafian follicle, the outermost layer, that is called, we can say it is externa, tunica externa, right? So this tunica externa, it is made up of collagen fibers. So here collagenase enzymes are used, right? So collagenase enzymes, it degrade the collagen fiber, right? Collagen fiber, and the some cells are there. So for who is responsible? LH is responsible. We need not to go very deeply, but one thing you understand, this luteinizing hormone, it is responsible for the ovulation, right? Ovulation. Look here, because here, if you imagine the covering of ovary, so you understand that covering ovary is also, it has a covering, muscular covering, that is made up of tunica albuginea. So tunica albuginea and collagen fiber, which forms theca externa of this follicle, they both degrade. When they degrade, then what happens? Ovulation takes place, right? The ovulatory phase is followed by the luteal phase. Luteal, why it is called luteal? Because that time corpus luteum is formed and this corpus luteum secretes progesterone, right? That's why it is called a luteal phase, right? Ovulatory phase means because here ovulation takes place. Ovulatory phase means it is the 14th day, right? This luteal phase has fixed day, and this fixed day means it has 14 days long. Luteal phase, or it is also called as post ovulatory phase, right? So luteal or post ovulatory phase, it is fixed day, 14th day. Either menstrual cycle is 28 days, or it may be 30 days, or it may be 32 days, but luteal phase is always fixed and it is for 14 days, right? The ovulation or ovulatory phase is followed by the luteal phase, right? During which the remaining part of the Graafian follicle, when ovulation takes place, then what happens? Because it contains blood vessels also. So what happens? It is that is blood is also filled up in this Graafian follicle, right? And when blood filled, that it is called as, what is called as, it is here Graafian follicle corpus hemorrhagic. It is not given here, but it is called corpus hemorrhagic because we know hemorrhagic means what? Blood, right? And during within 24 to 48 hours, this red blood colors means lymph, it is converted into matrix, it is converted into lutein, yellow colored lutein protein, right? The lutein protein, because it contains lutein protein, now it is called as corpus luteum. So corpus luteum is formed, right? The corpus luteum is now this corpus luteum it grows, and 22nd days the maximum growth of corpus luteum occurs, right? From 23rd day it starts degenerate. When it starts degenerate, that means what? Level of progesterone is also degenerate. Okay, I will tell you after this one. Graafian follicle transformed as the corpus luteum, and in which hormone developed this one? LH, luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is responsible for ovulation. Luteinizing hormone is also responsible for the formation of corpus luteum, right? The corpus luteum secretes large amounts of progesterone. Large amount of progesterone was secreted by corpus luteum. And progesterone, what is the function of progesterone? Progesterone, what happens? It stimulates the growth of endometrium, which is essential for maintenance of the endometrium. Maintenance of endometrium. Why endometrium? Because this hormone, it prepares the endometrium for implantation, right? That's why progesterone is also called as pregnancy hormone. Such an endometrium is necessary for implantation of the fertilized ovum and other events of pregnancy, right? During pregnancy, all events of the menstrual cycle stops, and there is no menstruation. When pregnancy occurs, this menstruation stops, right? In the absence of fertilization, what happens? This corpus luteum, it starts degenerates from 23rd day. That means we can say 22nd day the corpus luteum is maximum in size, maximum development occurs 22nd day, and 23rd day it is, means we can say here also the endometrium maximum growth is also at 22nd and 23rd day. Then after, what happens? When progesterone level decreased, then what happens? This endometrium, it also starts degrade, right? In the absence of fertilization, the corpus luteum degenerates, and this causes disintegration of the endometrium, leading to menstruation, marking a new cycle. In human beings, menstrual cycle ceases around 50 years of age, and this cease of menstruation is called menopause. Cyclic menstruation is an indicator of normal reproductive phase and extends between menarche and menopause. Menarche starting and menopause means last, right? Some this box, some hygiene is given here. Maintenance of hygiene and sanitation during the menstruation is very important, right? Because otherwise some infection will happen. Take bath and clean yourself regularly. Use sanitary napkins or clean homemade pads. You already know this one, only you have to read this one, right? Change sanitary napkins and homemade pads after every 4 to 5 hours as per the requirement. Dispose the use of sanitary napkins properly, wrapping it in a used paper. Do not throw the used napkins, right? Drain pipe, okay? You understand this one, so we need not to discuss about this one. So first I want to tell you here already we read about the menstrual cycle. Before menstrual cycle means I want to remind you something. In case of what happens, okay, as we know here, because this primary oocyte, first we start from how a this oocyte is formed, then from a oocyte how a Graafian follicle is formed, then ovum released. What happens here? The total means from embryo, that is gametogenesis, up to the fertilization. I will form a sketch here. You can understand easily, I think. Right. So we start from here. Primordial. Here first primordial follicles. Right. First, what happened? Primordial follicles. This one is primordial follicle. Primordial follicle, they are formed at the time of birth, is embryonic stage, right? We can say embryonic stage. At that time they are formed, and they contains to puberty, we can say also, right? At this stage, what happens? It is our primary oocyte. This one is our primary oocyte, and this is arrested at that time. This primary oocyte, it is arrested in prophase. First, prophase first means which stage? In diplotin stage. Right? Then what happens? Now from puberty, at the time of puberty, this primordial cells, when they increase in size, they form the primary follicles. Right? Here they forms primary follicle is formed. Right? At this time, this primordial follicle means how many primary oocytes are there? They have in both kidney. I am talking here for both kidney, non-SC, right? In both, not kidney, sorry, in both ovary, right? It contains 4 lakh primary oocytes. But at puberty, because they degenerate, then how many remaining are there? This time it is 1,20,002, 1,60,000 follicles are there, right? Dear number. At the time of puberty, means in both ovary, means in each ovary, it contains 60 to 80,000 follicles, right? Primary follicles at the time of puberty. Here in first menstruation, what happens? Here during, we can write here, during menstrual cycle, how many? In starting 6 to 12, right? Here also what happens? 6 to 12 primary follicle, they activated by FSH, right? Follicle stimulating hormone during menstrual cycle. Now this activated primary follicle, they forms secondary follicle. They form secondary follicle, right? Secondary follicle, but secondary follicle how many? In 6 to 12. Maximum they are degenerate. Only 1 or 2. We can say only 1 or 2 follicles, right? They form secondary follicles. To secondary follicles. Okay, you can understand there were these are secondary follicles. Only 1 or 2 secondary follicles are formed, right? And these secondary follicles, they are now converted into tertiary follicle. Here also look. In this case, what happened? It is also arrested in prophase. Means mitotic division, this first meiosis is not completed here. First, it is not completed. This side also, meiosis first is not completed, right? Because it is also arrested in prophase. Now, secondary follicle, here also meiosis first is there, and it is not completed, right? Now, this secondary follicle, it convert into tertiary follicle. and tertiary follicle only one, right? One follicle, one secondary follicle converted to tertiary follicle, and this tertiary follicle, it matures into Graafian follicle. So one or two secondary follicles are formed. In one or two, only one develop into tertiary follicle, and when tertiary follicle is formed, right, at that time this meiosis first is completed. Here what happens? Meiosis first completed. First completes. Meiosis first completes. That means what happens here? It becomes second oocyte, secondary oocyte. Like the secondary oocyte, we see this is the primary oocyte. Primary oocyte, these are too young. Look here, these are too young, right? This is the diploid, too young, also too young. But when it is converted to Graafian follicle, now it is completed. Now it becomes N. N means what? Haploid number of chromosomes are present, right? Now this it is Graafian follicle, secondary oocyte is formed, and this secondary oocyte, it is once more arrested in metaphase. Second, it is arrested in metaphase second, right? Metaphase substage is not there, right? Means here meiosis second start, but it is now once more arrested, right? It forms also one polar body. You know very well, one polar body is formed and another secondary oocyte is formed. Secondary oocyte, it is haploid in nature, right? Now this secondary oocyte, it is released at ovulation. At ovulation, what happens? This secondary oocyte is released, right? This secondary oocyte is released. Ovule is released. Ovum is released. When this ovum is released, then what happens? We have two things. After ovulation, what happens? Ovulation takes place, one side is ovum is released, another side, the remaining follicle, Graafian follicle with antrum, right? In antrum, what happens? Blood is filled. Antrum is present. Antrum, you know, this is the follicular cavity, right? Graafian follicle cavity. This one is called carpus hemo, hemorrhagia. Carpus hemorrhagicum, RHAGICUM, right? Blood filled antrum is called carpus hemorrhagicum, and this carpus hemorrhagicum, it is converted into carpus luteum. Carpus luteum, because here in this antrum, this blood is converted into lutein protein. That is carpus luteum. Now what happens? Carpus luteum, it secretes progesterone, right? Okay, when fertilization occurs, means when implantation, carpus luteum, if plantation occurs, then what happens? This carpus luteum, it is fixed for this carpus luteum, it is fixed for 9 months. Okay, we can say up to, it is fixed for up to parturition. Parturition means up to delivery, birth, right? And if fertilization not occur, or we can say if implantation not occur, good is implantation, right? If implantation not occur, then what happens? This carpus luteum, it is converted into carpus albicans. Carpus albicans means degenerated. We can say degenerates into carpus luteum. Carpus luteum degenerates into carpus albicans, right? And on 28th day, this carpus albicans, it is to miss this carpus luteum is totally degenerate, means it cannot secrete any hormones, right? Now here, why it is fixed for 9 months? Due to the presence of HCG hormone, and this HCG hormone is secretes by this placenta, right? This HCG. Pregnancy test is also, it is the presence of HCG, right, in urine. Okay, here you can see here ovum is released. Now ovum, if fertilization occur, if fusion means what? Fertilization occur, then what happens? If fusion yes and fusion no, if fusion occur, then what happens? It second it completes meiosis second, right, and forms two polar body and egg cell. Polar body and egg cell, and this egg cell after fusion, after syngamy, it forms zygote, and then fetus is formed and not fertilized, right, and this is degenerates. If it is not fertilized, that means no. The fertilized means yes, not fertilized, then what happens? This ovum, it degenerates. Ovum degenerates, right? This ovum is degenerate, means it get totally degenerate and leased out with menstrual cycle, right? So do you understand here what happens in a female body from embryonic stage and up to menstrual cycle? Here you can understand, right? This side I already tell you, degenerate corpus means here no fertilization, and here if fertilization occur means what happens? Now this placenta, it is fixed for 9th month, means it is fixed for the total gestation period, right, and it is fixed for up to which one? Delivery or parturition. Okay, now here menstrual cycle, what we read in menstrual cycle? Look here, it is divided into 3 phases. What 3 phases are there? 3 steps, we can say 3 phase. What 3 phase? First one is here, bleeding phase, PHASE, right? Second, it is proliferative phase, and third one is over here, luteal phase, right? What changes occurs in these phase, right? In between proliferative and luteal, it is ovulatory phase, ovulatory phase. Ovulatory phase means ovulation, and it take place on 14th day, right? This luteal phase, it is fixed for fixed day, means fixed 14 days. So never think if menstrual cycle is 30 days means ovulation take place at 15 days. No. At least you have to understand that post-ovulatory phase or luteal phase, it has fixed 40, right? So first minus from the whole days, these 14 days, and then you understand which day is ovulation days. Okay. Now here, suppose that I write here what changes occurs in hormone or in uterus or in ovary, inside the ovary. Suppose that I write here, first is our bleeding phase. Bleeding phase means what? It is totally from 3 to 5 days, right? So this side I will draw a column and we understand this through this column. Suppose that I write here, in this year, hormonal change. This side it is ovarian changes. And this side I write, suppose that uterine changes. Right? The bleeding phase means it lasts for 3 to 5 days. Now this phase is also divided into two parts, initial phase and terminal phase, means last phase. What happens in initial phase? Because it is a bleeding phase, it is also called as maturation phase, right? Here what happens? First here hormone change. So here we can say GnRH, hypothalamic hormone, gonadotrophic releasing hormone, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone. All the hormones they decrease, right? LH, progesterone, and estrogen, their level is decreased, means zero level is decreased, right? Decreased. What happens in ovarian changes? Ovary means what? Inside the ovary only corpus luteum is there. Now this corpus luteum, we know 20th day it is totally degenerate. We can say here corpus luteum degenerates, fully degenerates, means it cannot secrete any enzyme, right? And this is called corpus albicans, convert into corpus albicans. Now in uterine changes, what happens in uterine? Because here hormone levels are low, because FSH is responsible for uterine changes. So due to the decrease in FS level, this is the decreasing line, right? What happens here? Prostaglandin increased. It is increased, and this is a vasoconstrictor. This one is a vasoconstrictor. What happens? It constricts the blood vessels. When it constricts the blood vessels, the supply of blood vessels is reduced, right? In that, thus supply of blood is reduced, right? Is reduced. In where this blood is supplied to, that is stratum functional. Which layer? Which layer? It is stratum functionalis. In which layer? In STRATUM, stratum functionalis. Stratum functionalis. Then what happens? When blood is sufficient amount of blood is not available to stratum functionalis, it starts degenerate. It also degenerates. Thus, degenerate. Right? When this generate, what happens with the blood and this endometrium, that is stratum, this endometrium layer, stratum functionalis, it sludged off. Another function of this prostaglandin is it also means induced contraction in myometerium. It induced contraction in myometerium. When it induced contraction, what happens? This stratum functionalis with blood sludged off. from ovary and released from ovary. Oh, sorry, from, it is not ovary, it is uterine. Flushed off from uterus, right, and expelled out through vagina and comes out through vagina. And this means flushed stratum functionalis with blood. This one is called bleeding phase or menstruation. Terminal phase or terminal stage. This one is terminal phase, or it is also called as terminal stage. What happened in this stage? In this stage, what happens? Hormone changes. Now, because here progesterone estrogen is also low, then what happens? It gives negative feedback. Due to this negative feedback, what happens? The level of GnRH, FSH and LH, it increases. Now here what happens? It starts increasing. GnRH, FSH and LH increased. Slowly it increases, not just at once, right? They start increasing due to the negative feedback. Negative feedback of progesterone and estrogen, right? Because their level is less in blood, so they give negative feedback mainly to pituitary gland, and some feedback also go to the hypothalamus, right? So hypothalamus, it secretes gonadotropic releasing hormone, and due to this effect, FSH and LH, and also due to the negative feedback, the level of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, it increased. When the level of this follicle stimulating and luteinizing is increased in the blood, then what happens? Slowly this bleeding stops. Gradually in the terminal stage, bleeding reduced in terminal stage and ultimately stops.